Thank you so much, musicians. Daniel, that passage was just perfect. Thank you for that. Would you please take your Bibles and turn in them to Leviticus chapter 25? And if you would, please stand as you turn. For this morning's reading, we'll be reading verse 8 in chapter 25 through verse 23. Leviticus 25, 8 to 23. Please follow along as I read. You shall count 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, so that the time of the 7 weeks of years shall give you 49 years. Then you shall sound the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the Day of Atonement you shall sound the trumpet throughout all your land, and you shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, when each of you shall return to his property, and each of you shall return to his clan. The 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. In it you shall neither sow nor reap what grows of itself, nor gather the grapes from the undressed vines. For it is a jubilee. It shall be holy to you. You may eat the produce of the field. In this year of Jubilee, each of you shall return to his property. And if you make a sale to your neighbor or buy from your neighbor, you shall not wrong one another. You shall pay your neighbor according to the number of years after the Jubilee, and he shall sell it to you according to the number of years for crops. If the years are many, you shall increase the price. And if the years are few, you shall reduce the price. For it is the number of the crops that he is selling you. You shall not wrong one another, but you shall fear your God, for I am the Lord your God. Therefore you shall do my statutes and keep my rules and perform them, and then you will dwell in the land securely. The land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and dwell in it securely. And if you say, what shall we eat in the 7th year, if we may not sow or gather in our crop? I will command my blessing on you in the 6th year, so that it will produce a crop sufficient for 3 years. When you sow in the 8th year, you will be eating some of the old crop. You shall eat the old until the 9th year, when the crop arrives. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for the land is mine, for you are strangers and sojourners with me. May the Lord add his blessing this morning to the reading of his word. You can be seated. So, you and I, some of us live in Illinois, some of us live in Iowa, and because we're so close to the state line, wherever you live, we're familiar with the changes when you pass from one state into the other, you know? We're all familiar with that. Maybe more than most because of our proximity to the state line. I saw this just recently on Facebook that this is from DeKalb, Illinois Issues. Chuck and Emily commented actually on it. That's probably why I saw it. But yeah, so these counties apparently are looking to secede from Illinois and become part of Iowa. Does that get a clap or a boo? We don't a clap? Okay. Why would that happen? Why would they want to leave states and go to Iowa versus Illinois? Well, I mean, it depends who you are and how long your list might be, but you know, when we pass from Illinois into Iowa, you might think it's a better choice of restaurants over on the Iowa side. You might think that Illinois kind of happened first, and so it was planned, maybe not as thoughtfully as the Iowa side, and so maybe the river fronts are a little different. Ours is a little bit more industrial. Theirs has a mix of houses and city life. And so these are just some of the differences. You know, for us, a big difference would be the voucher system in Iowa. that instead of our taxes immediately going to the school of the state's choice, it could go to the school of our choice. Taxes would be different. There's a whole host of things that you could say are different between Illinois and Iowa. But the point I want to make is that we're familiar with a threshold of change. When you get to one state and to the other on these wilderness trips, we get into Montana and suddenly the speed limit gets to like whatever you want, basically. I mean, you can go so fast out there. It's really kind of nice. So we're familiar with this concept of I passed this threshold and now things feel different. They look different. They taste different in a sense. This is the idea. And I want you to think of that in terms of man's territory and God's territory. Okay? We're familiar from man's territory to man's territory, but I want you to think of it in terms of when you enter into God's house, when you enter into God's abode, what differences would you notice? This is the question I want to keep before you. And I want to keep it before you because I think God wants to keep it before you. I think He wants you to ask that question. What would I notice differently in God's side of territory versus man's side of territory? That's the idea. And the way that God sets it up is He puts His people in Egypt, and then He brings them out of Egypt into His territory. He has them build Him a house. Exodus starts with them building Pharaoh houses. It finishes with them building God a house. And He wants you to see what this threshold change feels like and looks like, okay? And so this is the essence of this morning's study. You look at Egypt, and what's Egypt typified by? Well, it's typified by work, by effort, by demands, sweat, labor. Blood, sweat, and tears could be a shorthand to say this is what Egypt was like. So that was the environment out of which God brought His people, and then He brings them into His abode, His territory. And what's so fascinating about His territory is He actually has His priests wear a certain form of garment, clothing, and the sole purpose of that type of clothing is so that you don't sweat. Imagine that. That God takes them out of this place where they are just dripping sweat. I mean, Egypt is called like a furnace. It's a hot place. They're making bricks. It's horrendous work, horrendous. And He takes them from that place and He brings them to a place where He says, no. In this place, I refuse to let you sweat. Imagine that. Imagine. This is the idea. And of course, where does this go back to? Well, it all goes back to Genesis. You get the impression that when you read Genesis, that man never sweat a drop until after the fall. Because when does sweat get spoken of? You will work the ground by the sweat of your brow. So it's like sweat doesn't exist in God's house. It exists outside of God's house, but it doesn't exist inside of God's house. It's really important to understand that when God draws a threshold, the spotlight is on the difference between work, effort, merit, sweat, to shalom, peace, no sweat. That's the big place where He shines the spotlight on the difference. And this didn't just surface in Leviticus. It happened way before, as I mentioned. Man's first full day experienced in Genesis was day 7, when there was no work. After He makes man, it says He rests him in the garden, indicating that the way you work in the garden is in a state of rest. This is the idea. In the beginning of Genesis, God uses the words in the creation narrative to start whetting your appetite for day 7. Genesis 1:1 consists of 7 words in the Hebrew. Genesis 1:2 consists of 14 words. Genesis 2, 1-3 consists of 35 words. Then you have words themselves, like God is the most prominent word in the passage, in the creation narrative. It happens 35 times. Heaven is mentioned 21 times. Earth is 21 times. And God made is 7 times. And it was so 7 times. And God saw that it was good 7 times. All of these things are beginning to cultivate this awareness of the number 7. And then it tells you what number 7 is. It's rest. And beyond that, the day is the last day mentioned. That all the other days have corresponding partners for themselves. But day 7 is the last day, and it doesn't have a corresponding partner. Which is to say that day 7 completes the whole weekly calendar. That all of the 6 days before day 7 were to be lived out and worked and labored in a state of rest. And then day 7 never ends. There's no evening and morning the 7th day. In other words, it's still going. It's still here for those who want to enter in. So that's before Leviticus. But then after Leviticus and in the law, this theme just grows and grows and grows. 1 day a week a man will rest according to the law. And then he gives the festal calendar with 7 feasts. And in those feasts, combined with the Sabbaths, you rest almost 60 days a year. But then you rest an entire year on the 7th year. And then you do that again every 7 times 7 in the 50th year. So rest is just, man is inundated with the rest that God offers. It's everywhere you turn. It's everywhere you look. The priests are ordained over a period of 7 days. If you're a leper and you have a skin condition and you're brought outside of the camp, in order to enter back in the camp, you need to be anointed 7 times. In other words, hey, just so you know, you're entering into rest land, right? Just so you know, you're entering into do nothing space. Just so you know. This is all on the strength of God. When Naaman comes to Elisha in 2 Kings, he's got a skin disease. He's a foreigner. He's not from Israel. So what does Elisha do? He says, instead of being anointed 7 times, go in the Jordan and dip yourself 7 times in the Jordan, right? So everything is related to the number 7. Naaman leaves to go back to his land in Syria, and he takes some of the land of Israel with him. He wants to live in rest territory. This is the concept. This is the idea. So when you get to the year of Jubilee, I just want you to see how the year of Jubilee, 7 times 7, and then you enter into the 50th year, the year of Jubilee, where land gets returned to people, slaves get released. It's even possible that foreign slaves were to be released during this time. And so you come to this, and this year of Jubilee, I want you to see how this passage in Leviticus 25 is so near when Israel actually enters into the land in Jericho. Look at what happens. So this is the passage we just read, Leviticus 25. You shall count 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, so that the time of the 7 weeks of years shall give you 49 years. Then you shall sound the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. Then they pass into the land, and look at how it explains it. When you go to the city of Jericho, this is the Lord's command. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day, you shall march around the city 7 times. And the priests shall blow the trumpets. Notice, blow the loud trumpet for the year of Jubilee. They blow the loud trumpet as they're entering into Canaan. With Jericho. On the 7th day, they rose early at the dawn of day and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. It was only on that day that they marched around the city 7 times. And at the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." Do you see that this is the first city conquered in Canaan? And God he's drawing a line of demarcation. He's delineating between Egypt and my territory. My territory will be defined by the number 7. It will be the place where you rest. Why? Is it because you do nothing? Is it just a land filled with couches where you just sleep all day and plug in oxygen and go to bed? No, it's not. It will actually be the greatest place of productivity in all the earth. But what it means is that while you will produce more than anyone in all the earth and be like a wine cup on a wine pyramid that just gets filled up and fills everybody else's cup, while it will be the place of most productivity, it will simultaneously be the place that if an interviewer were to come up and say, hey, man, you guys are producing sure a lot of stuff. How are you doing it all? Honestly, we don't even sweat because it's all the strength of the Lord. He energizes. You should have seen the way Bezalel and Aholiab built the temple. God just downloaded wisdom in them, and they cultivated, and they equipped, and they trained people. We spread out the work. God does it. Yeah, we work harder than all the other nations, yet not us, but the work of Christ in us. It's exactly what Paul says. So Paul is the most productive apostle there is, but at the same time, he says, it's as though I didn't even do it. I'm just riding on the coattails of Jesus. And yeah, all this stuff happens, but man, it's by the grace of Christ. So it's this beautiful confluence of rest and work. And the question is does that typify us? That's the question. You see, Israel gets their name from essentially the hardest worker there was in his own flesh. And his name was Jacob. Arguably, you could not find a harder worker in the Bible than Jacob. Jacob's brain is going all the time. His body's going all the time. Why? Because he's manipulating and maneuvering and working. I mean, he's born grabbing someone's heel. I mean, this guy is a worker. He's just going. And Jacob's definitive moment is where God wrestles him. And God lets him get him in a headlock, as it were. God lets him get in a submission hold because he wants to say, Jacob, you're a maneuverer. And you've outmaneuvered me. Because, I was going to give you a blessing, but you got it your way. So I'm going to let you get me in this hold, okay, to show you who you are. That every blessing I want to give you, you steal first. You beat me to it. So I'm going to let you get in this hold. Obviously, it's not because God's weak. He literally touches his hip, and Jacob's like, oh! So it's not that. But his point is Jacob, I'm bringing you to a crux. Will you keep fighting for yourself and watch your life go into total disarray and despair? Or will you let me fight for you and let me win your battles? And you can walk with a hip and still win every battle in my way. And the greatest guy you fear right now is Esau, and just watch how I turn his attitude towards you. Just watch. You won't believe it. And it's exactly what happens. Jacob meets Esau. He's scared for his life. And when Esau just wraps his arms around him, he says, to see your face is to see the face of God. I watched God win the battle his way. And it tastes so much better than me dressing up like a goat, a hairy Esau, and stealing it from my dad. I like it so much. I feel so much better when you win your battles your way instead of me stealing and eking out the battle my way. This is to be Israel. And the Jubilee was essentially to give that to them. It was to give them this concept that no, you will not secure your status by having all the land and all the resources. That's how you define security. You amass more possessions, you get more money in the bank, and you think, I'm good now. That's how you define security. That's not how I do it. And so I will keep the Rockefellers from happening, so to speak. Like you might get wealthy, but you won't have a lot of land. I will curb you. See, the land here is a lot like manna. You could grab as much as you wanted or as little, but everybody just had what? Enough. That's how it worked. And this is what the Jubilee was about. God actually will typify the entire nation by being a Jubilee nation. How does he do that? This is the idea, is he wants you to know that when you enter his house, it is a place of rest. How does he do that? How does he do that? Okay. So these are these weird passages that you read over in your devotions when you're reading through the Bible, and you don't give much thought to it, if you're like me, until you start piecing some of these things together and it blows your mind. Okay? So in 1 Kings 6, not the most exciting book in the Bible, you're reading 1 Kings 6, and it says that Solomon began building his house and the house of the Lord the 480th year from the time of the Exodus. Okay? So there's a sense in which you think the Exodus ended in the book of Exodus. It actually doesn't. It doesn't really end. The process of coming out of Egypt and building God a house doesn't actually end until Kings and Chronicles, where the temple's built. That's where the Exodus actually has an end. But you read this number, 480 years from the time of the Exodus, and then it tells you, remember, the Bible doesn't give you, it doesn't just shout out what God's trying to tell you. It whispers it. It whispers it. Why? Because he wants your ear to feel the warmth of his breath. That's how close he wants you to get to him when you read his Bible. So he doesn't shout it, he whispers it. That's what a wise man does. The thirsty will listen. The thirsty will come and drink. And so he whispers this. He started building in the 480th year. You're like, okay. And you don't think God's just a weird number guy that's an old grandpa that tells stories that nobody cares about. No, he's very intentional. He's very thoughtful. And maybe so is your grandpa. Don't disrespect him. Okay. So 480th year, he tells you, I wish I could show it to you. This is a side note here. This isn't in my notes, and this is where it always goes bad or worse. But how many of you guys have seen Bob Ross before? Afro painter, okay? I saw this reel this week, and it was really fascinating. So someone took all of his paintings that he ever did, apparently, and they digitally categorized them, all these landscape pictures, and they said, here's the mind blow. Bob Ross wasn't doing individual paintings. He was painting a landscape that was all connected. And it goes through these hundreds or thousands of paintings that he did, and it shows this river that's moving. And I don't know if Bob Ross did that, but the way they presented these paintings kind of looked like he did, and you're like, mind blow. Wouldn't that be amazing if he did actually do it? But that's what the Bible's like. That you read it and you think, disconnected, just a different thing. But no, we don't know about Bob Ross, but we know about the Bible. And it is all interconnected. And so when you read these things, you have to put it together. So Solomon starts building his house and the house of God in the 480th year since the Exodus. How long does it take to build his house, Wednesday night Bible study people? Oh, don't hurt me. I know you're all old and tired, but let's go. What do we got? 13 years it took for him to build Solomon's house. So add 13 years to 480, and where are you at? Really? Come on, shout it out. This isn't a trick question. 493. Okay, so then he starts building God's house, and it tells you how long it took to build God's house. How many? 7 years. Add that to 493. What are you at? 500. What's a Jubilee? 50. What's a Jubilee times 10? Okay. God's land, God's house, is a Jubilee on steroids. That's the idea. That there is no rest like there is with God. And guys, the people who walk in that rest will tell you that. That no, it's all God. I can't believe you did this and that. No, it's all God. How do you know that? Because I've screwed it up, and I still try to screw it up, and he still does it. It's all him. I still mess up over and over, but he's doing his work, and it's incredible. This is the movement, that God's house is this supreme place of rest. You ask the question, okay, why couldn't David, the one who had it in his heart to build the house of God, why wouldn't God let him do that? And I anticipate you all know the answer to this question. Because he was a man of war, blood, killing. Yes, all those are answers. So he was a man of war, all right? But you may not know the answer to, it wasn't just that he didn't want David to do it as a man of war. It's also that he wanted Solomon to build it. So it was a negative and a positive. It's both. I don't want David. He's a sword brandishing guy. He's covered in blood. He's all war. He's got war paint on. I don't want that. I don't want war to typify my house. Do you want war to typify your house? We hope not. We've had our house typified by war, and we all hate it, right? Okay, so we don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want to turn on the news and see what we see today. We don't want that in our house. We don't want that in our nation. But it's what we see all the time. We don't want that. But God says, okay, what do you want? What do you want? Because that is typified in the person named Solomon, okay? And what typifies Solomon according to God? Look at what he says. He says to David, you have shed much blood and have waged great wars. You shall not build a house to my name, because you have shed so much blood before me on the earth. Behold, a son shall be born to you who shall be a man of rest. See, don't just think of David and see Braveheart face David and he's over here. You also need to maybe even more think about Solomon, which is typified as being a man of peace, of rest, of shalom. That is what God wants you to think when you think about his place, his abode. This is even doubled down. I've shared this with you before, but when the temple is finally built by Solomon, look at how it's built. When the house was built, it was with stone prepared at the quarry, so that neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron was heard in the house while it was being built. That God, in these sorts of object lessons, shows you what it's like to live in his house. I opened up Facebook this morning and saw a friend, Jacob Siegwart, friend from Gitche, posted, there's just nothing quite like waking up early in the morning when everybody's asleep, having my coffee, and looking at a freshly laid field of snow, And I was like, oh, that's so true, Such a good thing. I loved it, It's great. And that is the sense of God's house in a way, okay? And so this is the idea. Now, let's start bringing it in terms of application. See, this is how God's house is typified, and he raises that up against Pharaoh's house, which we all judge Pharaoh harshly, but we're all just like him. We're just like Pharaoh. Israel was just like Pharaoh. Just like him. They worshiped the same God. They built a calf, like Pharaoh had a calf. And what typifies Pharaoh and what typifies us? Okay? Here's the problem. You ready? You and I define rest as an accomplished thing, a period of time, versus a state of being. We define rest as a ceasing of work alone. God defines rest as a state of being in which you work sometimes and you physically rest sometimes. But it's all under the umbrella of rest. Okay? So we too narrowly define rest as the absence of work or the presence of wholeness and whatever. But as soon as conflict comes in, as soon as work comes in, we start thinking we're not in a state of rest. But God says, no, in my house, both productivity and lay down and sleep and take a nap, green pastures, still waters, they're both under the umbrella of rest. But you define it as two separate. I can't say it any better than Jesus, right? Yeah, I can't. Luke 12. This is how we define rest, okay? He gives this example to two brothers. their parents have died. They get an inheritance, and the older brother keeps the inheritance for himself. That's a big deal, right? Like, if that happened in the church and it came to me, I would have to, like, get involved. Like, that's unethical, right? Like, but would I be like a fool entering another man's fight? Maybe, because Jesus doesn't enter it. This is what he says to the brother who just got disinherited by his older brother, okay? So this is what he says. The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, what shall I do? So you just got a huge, huge influx of cash. Like, enormous. Like, enough to set you for life. You don't need to work anymore. I heard guys talking about retirement in the hallway. You just retire. You got enough. You don't need to work anymore. You don't need the paycheck. You got enough to carry you into, the 120-year death. You live as long as you can, and you die. You got enough money that whole time. What do you do with all that cash? This is what Jesus is presenting. And the guy says, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns, and I'll build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. Okay, so how did this guy look at rest? Pre-retirement years is defined by what? Work. Have enough money for retirement? Rest. There's a firm line between the two. There is no umbrella of rest. There's no umbrella of rest. And the reason there's no umbrella for rest is because he discounts the one who actually gave him the banger crop. Who is who? God. When you take God out of the equation, it's work, 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 rest. Your kids come up, hey, Dad, I'm resting. I'm resting. I worked so hard to get here. Leave me alone. Right? I've been working all day to get to this couch. Stop. This is rest time, right? There's a firm demarcation between work and rest in the pagan, who doesn't have God as God. But the one who has God as God is both able to seamlessly move in work and out of work, to know when to hang up the tools and when to pick them back up. The one who has his or her rest disrupted and the one who carves out rest in a good way. All of that is seamless and beautiful who has God as their God. That's the amazing thing. That they just are a beautiful display of someone who looks as though they're resting when they're working and when they're relaxing. And they can leave relaxing and go into work, or they can leave work and go into rest in a very seamless way. Okay? I want you to see that. I want you to see that in Jesus. Okay? But look at Proverbs 30. This defines it really, really well. Listen how this guy talks, who has God as his umbrella. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful for me. Feed me with manna. Lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? That's exactly what the guy in Luke 12 did. Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. In other words, Lord, just keep me in the middle. Because I'm too weak, I'd steal, I'd manipulate, I'd get bad, I'd get ugly. But don't give me a lot, because I'd stop relying. Keep me right here. Do you know the Levites didn't own any land? They only lived in the cities. That's where they lived. Why? Because God was their inheritance, not the land. And all of the other Israelites could have said, man, the Levites have it bad. They don't have any land. And God, I think, would have said back to them, you're actually just like them to a lesser degree, because you can't keep all the land you get, you wealthy guys. Right? You guys that would be so able to amass all this stuff, I'm going to keep you also like a priest too, because at the end of the 50 years, all the land goes back to the people. Right? So Israel is like a kingdom of priests. Right? So to a lesser degree, they're like the priest who had no land. Because who was the priest's inheritance? It was God. I was talking to Jennifer Scott. I remember her and Brian said a long time ago in our Connect group that there was a time in their life where they really felt like we really need to get like an emergency fund established, you know? And I'm paraphrasing. I'm probably not going to say this just right. You have to talk to Brian and Jennifer to get the facts. But they said, you know, every time we got what we were starting to get close to what we thought, God did something and it all went away. And every time we started getting back close to where I think God did something, took it away. Furnace goes out, you know, whatever it was. And they said a lesson that he taught us during that time was not to not have an emergency fund. Dave Ramsey people, they're all getting their Bibles ready to chuck it at me. No, not to not have an emergency fund, but to ultimately understand that God wants you to see him as your provider, shelter, and caretaker. More than, okay, now we have enough. Did I say it well, Brian? All right. So that's Proverbs 30. That's where he's at. And so I don't know where any of us are looking to hedge our bets to say, okay, you know, if this goes all bad, I'd be lying if Alex and I haven't said, okay, we might need to start a drywalling business together or something. Like, if it all goes bad, what are we going to do, you know? So there's a part of that, but you never want to live there. You want to keep your eye on God as your sustainer, because here's the deal. There have been guys who have gotten to the Luke 12 position, and it doesn't have to be a story that Jesus is making up as in parable fashion. No, there are people in the Bible that actually got to the place that Brian and Jennifer had thought, oh, let's get to this place. There have been guys that actually got there, and God didn't stop them. I'll tell you one of them. His name was David. God had established rest on all sides for David. And it came the time of the year where kings went out to war. And that sounds like it might not be rest. No, it was just minor stuff. It's like, hey, let's just all keep our boundaries and I'll fight you. Maybe I'll get a few more inches, more feet, yards, miles, whatever. It was just maintenance war. It wasn't like, we're surrounded. It wasn't like that. It was the time that people went and defended that which was their own. But David looked around and he's like, we got the guys. We got the land. Our borders are secure. Joab, you go. This is chill time. I don't need to fight anymore. Enter Bathsheba. Right? See, when you get to the place where you think you're all set, horrendous things happen. Horrible decisions are made. When you stop relying on God as though you need daily bread. I mean, Jesus prays for daily bread. You wonder, like, is part of Jesus' prayer, when you've got enough bread for a month, should you pray, stop, just give me daily, because a month's bread's not good for me. Do you see? This is the idea that we want to be in this place. David got to the place that so many of us think we want to get to, and a tremendous fall happened. And if you need modern day examples of that, just look at all the movie stars and the radio stars and all these people that attain everything for that which everyone's working. Oh, I wish I could make it big. Look at the people who make it big and really ask yourself, do you want to make it big actually? Like, look at what hellish things happen to those people when they make it big. Do you really want that success? You know, what does the scripture say? A man is tested by his what? His praise. A man is tested by his praise. You would have thought I said a man is tested by his trials. And there's truth to that too. James makes that point. But a man is tested when things are going awesome. Watch out. Watch out. That's the deal. So Lord, keep me on a daily diet. That's where I want to be kept. And so This is the lie. The lie is that rest is a destination versus a state of existence only experienced with God. Let me read that again. The lie is that rest is a destination versus a state of existence only possible, only experienced with God. Which mindset do you and I approach life with? I mean, just yesterday, I had a lot of things going, and Becky is asking, is something wrong? And what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of the next. I'm thinking, I got a sermon. I got this thing I got to go to. I'm living in fear, worry, anxiety of the next thing, right? Instead of just enjoying the moment, right, where we were at. And so this is our tendency. Why? Because Ben thinks rest is a destination. Ben thinks when it's all tied up, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, then I can sit back and relax and enjoy. But then I get grumpy when that gets objected to. And you know, Becky doesn't see me plop down on the couch. She's in the kitchen and says, hey, Ben, can you go, that time? This is why I just got to, right? That's a person that sees rest as a destination versus a state of existence that can work or rest at any given moment. And so this is the way to think. This is God's paradigm for how to approach life. That it is all, because of God's strength, because of God's joy, all is under the realm of rest, both work and rest. So, I want you to see for a moment how Jesus is the perfect typification of both of these. How he lives in a state of rest, and he can leave that state of rest and work, or he can work in a state of rest. Okay? Just take a look at a couple passages where you see Jesus typify this. It's the Sabbath day when this happens. What is Sabbath a time of for Israel? Rest. Like they even said, you can only walk this far. And I mean, you can't pick any grain. The disciples got in trouble for that. All this sort of stuff, right? Rest. You do nothing. You do nothing. Look at what Jesus does. A man was in the synagogue with a withered hand, and they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Is it lawful to work, Jesus, on the Sabbath? So that they might accuse him. He said to them, which one of you has a sheep, if it falls into the pit, in a pit on the Sabbath, will not take hold of it and lift it out? In other words, God, the Father, in his own law that you are reading from that says you have to rest on the Sabbath, allows work in certain instances that you can leave that state of rest and work if it's an important thing that's of him. And he says, so you do that, of how much more value is man than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. So this is Jesus in a state of rest, but leaving the state of rest seamlessly to work, and it's still under the realm of rest. And then he does it the opposite way. Look at what he says. We looked at this last week, Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And you might think that means, all couches, we don't work. Not at all. My yoke, that's a work term. That's a work term. That's like my work truck, my tool belt, okay? Take my tool belt upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I remember a specific time John Conrad was helping me in the attic, and it was a huge ordeal. John had worked a full day, and then he comes over to help me. It's late at night. We're getting there, and we're creating a threshold in the attic to walk through to make it to the stairs. And we're cutting up the roof, as it were, on the insides to get it higher and higher and higher. And we put tremendous work in to get it to where it was. And for anybody who's ever worked with me, you know that once isn't good enough. You got to do it twice, otherwise it's not done. So we get to the place, it's all cinched up, ready to go, and I walk through, and it nicks the top of my head. And I'm not the one that's going to spend a lot of time up there. It's going to be the kids. Well, now Finn's taller than me, so they go figure. But I'm like, John's sweaty. I'm like, you're going to kill me, but I'd like to get it like this much higher. What do you think? We got sawzalls. It's awful. And he goes, I'm the $1 million man. Let's get this thing done. And we start cutting all of it over. And I just stood back in shock. This guy's an older guy. He's worn out. He's beat up. And he's like, let's get this thing done. He was working in a state of rest, and it blew me away. He was happy. It wasn't, when will you ever shut up? It was magical. It's magical. And you all know the type situations I'm talking about where you're with someone and you're in the pits of despair because you don't want to be there, you don't want to work, and you look at them and they're like happy, free from they're not heavy laden, they're free in the strength and the energy of the Lord. That's what Jesus says. So you might think, okay, he's not talking about work. No, he is talking about work. And he says it's crazy work, but it feels light. It doesn't feel heavy. It's easy. It's not a burden. This is where God is looking to take all of Israel, okay? He wants them to see him as their rest and not a time in the year or a vacation destination or when at the end of the day or this and that and the other. He wants them to see him as rest. And so he will give you green pastures and still waters, or he'll give you something that's not so easy, but he'll give you the strength to carry it out. That's the deal. So are you that way? I want to give you guys a couple very, very secular examples that, Brian Bill over at Edgewood, I love this saying. He goes, I love it when science catches up with the Bible. Let me say it again. I love it when science catches up with the Bible. So the Bible's been here for thousands of years, and science eventually is like, oh, they seem to be kind of up to something, and just take a look at a couple examples. How many of you, let me go back here. How many of you take naps? Oh, raise them high. This is important. Okay, how many of you scorn nap takers? You take naps? Of course it's you. Dan Freeman, every Sunday afternoon, not this time of year, but I'm just about to lay down. I'm exhausted, and I get a text. Pickleball? I call him, dude, come on. You'll be so happy you did it. All right, Dan, this is for you. Okay. Here's the deal. You ready? Okay. Nap takers, nap. Nap. You're so weak. All right? Check this out. Recent study by, let me give credit to whom credit is due here. This is University College London and University of Republic in Uruguay. Check this out. All right. Study finds people who nap regularly have larger brains. Okay. Check this out. Equivalent study finds, hey, by the way, 35,000 people study. This isn't like 120 people. No, 35,000. It's a big study, okay? Equivalent to 2.6 to 6.5 years of brain aging for people who don't nap regularly, okay? Why do I say that? Because if you have too strict of a view on work, there's no rest time, it apparently is not healthy for you. And remember, in Genesis, one of the big themes is that God does his best work when his people are asleep. Okay, so that's one example that I recently saw. Another example. This is University of Helsinki. Research finds that women who engage in traditional grandma hobbies tend to live healthier, longer lives. Listen to what it says here. Women who regularly engage in traditional grandma hobbies such as knitting, sewing, crocheting, gardening tend to live up to 8 years longer on average. These activities help calm the nervous system by lowering stress and promoting a meditative, focused state through repetitive movement. They also build confidence by creating a sense of purpose, routine, and visible accomplishment. Mentally, such hobbies keep the brain active, supporting memory, attention, and cognitive flexibility as women age. Why do I share this study? I share this study to say, if you have too firm a definition of rest, that this is a time in which you do nothing, okay? Be careful how you define rest. That rest can involve work in it, but it's good. It's good. So completely unplugging has a place. But be careful how narrowly you define rest. And then a last example is a study that just came out from Stanford University School of Medicine. And it's a study on the neuroplasticity and the impact of negative thought patterns on emotional regulation. So that's a big word, or big phrase, big title. But the concept here is people who complain regularly and people who see and focus on the positive in any and every situation, okay? Let me just ask, why would someone complain? Why do I complain? I complain because my situation is not restful. I mean, that's the short of it. I want it to be different. I want my rest to be defined in this way and look this way. And so I complain when it's not that way, okay? But it's rest-based. It's looking the way I want it to look, and when it doesn't, I complain. Listen to this study. Research shows repeating complaining physically rewires your brain to prioritize stress and negativity. The way we speak about our daily challenges does more than just vent frustration. It physically alters the architecture of the brain, this study shows. When we engage in chronic complaining, we repeatedly activate neural networks responsible for detecting threats and processing stress. Through the biological process of neuroplasticity, these circuits become stronger and more efficient every time they're used. Essentially, the brain learns to become more adept at finding things to be unhappy about, turning a temporary mood into a permanent biological predisposition toward negativity and fear-based thinking. As these negative pathways become the brain's default setting, individuals often experience a measurable increase in baseline stress levels and emotional volatility. So it goes on, and I could read on, but this is what we experience. This is what happens when we live like this. C.S. Lewis said this a long time ago, that you start with a grumble, but you're still distinct from the grumble. But then very shortly, you grumble like as a pastime, and then beyond that, he says you become a grumble in a sense that you can't differentiate yourself from the grumble. You're just it. You are a grumble. And so this is true. We've known it's true, but into this place, Jesus speaks. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim jubilee, liberty to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. That Jesus becomes not just the master behind the yoke, but the partner in the yoke. Okay? Like we're two oxen in a yoke, and I look over and I see Jesus bearing my yoke with me, and all of life becomes easier. Someone texted me this week to pray for them. They got a very stressful situation coming up, and their follow-up was, I don't know why I get so stressed about this stuff, you know? And God has rescued them out of all their troubles, and this will just be another one, you know? That's the idea, because Jesus is with us. And as a result of that, what we need to be focusing on, and this is where the Bible catches up with science, science catches up with the Bible. Philippians 4, listen to what Paul says 2,000 years ago. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And then look what he says. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. See, Paul cannot say those things unless these churches didn't see him like I saw John that day. He can't say that. He can't say, focus on the positive like I have, unless he actually did it when he was with them. It's the same thing Jesus says. I say these things to you, to his disciples, so that my joy might be in you. The disciples would have bust out laughing if Jesus wasn't actually joyful. What joy? You're a kill sport. No, they believed him because he had it. How did he have it? Because he trusted his Father at every moment of every day. And he believed that whatever this looks like right now, my Father's up to something better than I could possibly ask or imagine. So I'm going to go with him. I'm going to go with him. And I'm going to rest as I do because he'll give me the strength and he'll give the outcome. It's not my problem. This is a complimentary message to last week. Musicians, would you please come?